The sun was setting over Pine Ridge, casting long shadows across the quiet streets of the small town. Laura sat on the porch of her rented apartment, scrolling through her phone while sipping a cup of tea. She wasn't expecting anything unusual. That evening, just another ordinary day in her predictable life. 24 years old? She had grown used to the rhythm of her days. Attending classes at the local community college during the mornings and working part-time jobs in the afternoons. One of those jobs was babysitting, which she didn't mind too much because it paid well and gave her time to study. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps, crunching against gravel. Looking up, she saw Mr. Dawson walking toward her. He was an older man with thinning gray hair and a kind smile. Though they weren't close friends, he lived just a few houses down and often waved hello when their paths crossed. Tonight, however, his expression seemed more serious than usual. "Laura," he began as he approached, "do you have a moment?" She nodded, setting her phone aside. "Of course, Mr. Dawson. What's going on?" He hesitated for a second, glancing around as if making sure no one else could hear him. Then leaning slightly closer, he said, "I've got a favor to ask. Some acquaintances of mine are visiting from out of town, and they need someone to watch their kids tonight. They're willing to pay double your normal rate." Laura raised an eyebrow. Double her rate! That was tempting, especially since money had been tight lately. Still, something about the way he phrased it made her curious. "Out-of-town acquaintances?" she asked cautiously. "They staying nearby?" Mr. Dawson nodded quickly. Yes. They're renting a cabin not far from here. It's peaceful. Secluded, you know. Perfect for visitors who want some privacy. Privacy? Laura thought. Why would anyone coming all this way need so much privacy? But before she could voice her concerns, Mr. Dawson added, "They're really nice people, I promise. And their kids seem sweet enough. Just think about it, okay? They'd be thrilled if you could help them out." Laura bit her lip, weighing her options. On one hand, babysitting strangers' children in a remote location sounded risky. On the other hand, she needed the extra cash, and Mr. Dawson wouldn't recommend someone untrustworthy, would he? After a moment of deliberation, she sighed and agreed. "Right, fine, I'll do it." "Where's the cabin?" Relief washed over Mr. Dawson's face. "Thank you, Laura. You won't regret it." He scribbled an address on a piece of paper and handed it to her. "Just follow this road until you reach the edge of the woods. The cabin will be there. Oh, and don't worry about bringing anything. They've got everything you might need." With that, he turned and hurried back toward his house, leaving Laura staring at the slip of paper in her hand. Something about the whole situation felt off, but she shrugged it off, deciding not to borrow trouble. Grabbing her bag, she locked up her apartment and climbed into her car. The drive to the cabin took longer than expected. As she left the main road and entered the wooded area, the sunlight faded, replaced by the dim glow of her headlights cutting through the trees. Pine needles crunched under her tires as she navigated the narrow dirt path leading deeper into the forest. Eventually, she spotted the cabin, a modest structure nestled among towering pines, its windows glowing softly with warm light. Taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, Laura stepped out of her car and walked to the front door. Before she could knock, it swung open, revealing two figures standing side by side. Both were tall and lean, draped in shimmering silver robes that seemed to catch the faint moonlight. Their faces were obscured by intricate masks resembling animal skulls, one resembling a wolf, the other a bird of prey. For a brief moment, Laura froze, unsure whether she should run or stay. But then the figure wearing the wolf mask spoke, its voice smooth and calm. "You must be Laura. We've been expecting you." Despite her unease, Laura managed a polite smile. Yes, that's me. Are you Mr. Dawson's friends?" "We are," replied the second figure, the one with the bird mask. Its voice carried a melodic quality, almost soothing. "My name is Nira, and this is Kale. Thank you for agreeing to assist us tonight." Kale inclined his head slightly, though. The gesture was hard to read beneath the mask. "We appreciate your willingness to accommodate such short notice." Laura nodded, still feeling uneasy, but determined to keep her composure. "No problem. So, where are the kids?" Nira stepped aside, gesturing for Laura to enter. Interior of the cabin was surprisingly cozy, with wooden walls, plush rugs, and a crackling fireplace. Sitting cross-legged on the floor near the hearth were two children, or at least they looked like children. The boy appeared to be around 10 years old, with tousled black hair and sharp features. The girl looked younger, perhaps 6 or 7, with curly brown hair framing her round face. Both wore simple clothes, but what caught Laura's attention were their eyes. They glowed faintly, a golden hue that seemed unnatural yet mesmerizing. "This is Rin," Nira introduced, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "And this is Tessa." She motioned toward the girl, who grinned mischievously. "Hi," Laura said, forcing herself to sound cheerful. "Nice to meet you both." Rin studied her intently, his gaze unnervingly intense for someone so young. "You're different from the others," he remarked, tilting his head. "Why did you agree to come here?" Laura blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Well, I needed the work, I guess. Plus, Mr. Dawson vouched for you guys." Tessa giggled, hopping to her feet. "He doesn't know us very well," she chirped, earning a subtle glare from Nira. Ignoring it, the girl continued, "But we're fun. We can show you tricks." Before Laura could respond, Kale intervened. "That's enough, Tessa. Let Laura settle in first." Turning to Laura, he added, "We'll only be gone for a few hours. Please ensure they remain indoors. During our absence." Something about the way he emphasized indoors sent a chill down Laura's spine, but she nodded anyway. "Sure thing. Anything specific I should know about them?" "They're curious," Nira said simply, "and energetic. Keep them occupied, and you'll have no issues." With that, the two masked figures turned and headed outside, leaving Laura alone with the children. For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Then Tessa grabbed Laura's hand, pulling her toward the couch. "Let's play a game," the girl exclaimed excitedly. "Rin loves puzzles, and I like hide-and-seek." Laura forced a laugh, trying to shake off her lingering discomfort. "Okay, how about we start with something easy, like a board game?" Rin smirked, retrieving a box from a nearby shelf. "We already played all these." "Twice," Laura replied, raising an eyebrow. "Well, maybe we can try baking cookies instead. Have you ever done that?" Both kids exchanged glances, clearly intrigued. "Cookies?" Essa echoed, her eyes widening. "What are those?" Laura stared at them, momentarily confused. How could anyone not know what cookies were? Shaking her head, she decided to take it as a challenge. "Come on, I'll show you." They gathered ingredients in the kitchen. Laura couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every now and then, she'd catch Rin staring at her, his glowing eyes gleaming with curiosity. And Tessa, despite her bubbly demeanor, moved with an agility that seemed almost unnatural, climbing onto counters and reaching shelves without effort. Still, Laura reminded herself that kids were unpredictable, and maybe these two were just particularly energetic. She focused on teaching them how to measure flour, crack eggs, and mix batter. By the time the cookies were in the oven, she found herself relaxing a little, even laughing at Tessa's attempts to lick chocolate chips off her fingers. But as the evening wore on, strange things began happening. Shadows shifted unnaturally. In the corners of the room, faint growls echoed from somewhere outside. And once, when Laura turned around, she swore she saw claws where Rin's fingernails should have been. Her heart raced, but she told herself it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. After all, what harm could two kids possibly cause? As the cookies baked in the oven, filling the cabin with a warm, sugary aroma, Laura tried to push aside the strange feelings creeping into her mind. She focused on keeping things light and fun, chatting with Rin and Tessa about their favorite games and stories. But no matter how hard she tried to act normal, something about the two children and the entire situation felt undeniably off. Rin, especially, seemed unusually curious. While Tessa bounced around the kitchen, humming a tune that didn't quite sound human, Rin sat quietly at the table, watching Laura with those glowing amber eyes. His gaze was intense, almost like he was studying her every move. At one point, he leaned forward and asked, "Why did you really come here?" Laura blinked, caught off guard by the question. "What do you mean?" "I already told you I needed the work." He tilted his head, as if considering her answer. Most humans wouldn't agree to babysit strangers' kids in the middle of nowhere, not without asking more questions. Laura hesitated, unsure how to respond. The way he said humans made her stomach twist. Did he mean it casually, or was there something deeper behind his words? Before she could think of a reply, Tessa chimed in, "Maybe she's brave, or dumb." She giggled, clearly amused by her own joke. "Tessa," Laura said firmly, trying to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Let's focus on the cookies for now, okay?" The timer dinged just in time, saving Laura from having to explain herself further. She pulled the tray out of the oven, letting the golden brown cookies cool on the counter. Tessa immediately reached for one, only to yelp when the heat stung her fingers. For a split second, Laura thought she saw tiny claw marks scorching the countertop where Tessa's hand had touched it. But when she blinked, the surface looked perfectly fine. "Careful," Laura said, handing Tessa a spatula instead. "You don't want to burn yourself." Tessa pouted but took the spatula obediently. "You're boring," she muttered under her breath, though there was no real malice in her tone. After they'd all eaten a few cookies, Laura suggested playing hide-and-seek to burn off some energy. Tessa squealed with excitement, while Rin smirked, clearly confident in his ability to win. They decided the game would be limited to the inside of the cabin, since Kale and Nira had specifically instructed them not to go outside. "Okay," Laura said, standing in the living room. "I'll count to 20. You to find good hiding spots, and then I'll try to find you." She closed her eyes and started counting aloud, listening as the sound of footsteps faded into different parts of the cabin. When she reached 20, she opened her eyes and began searching. The first place she checked was the kitchen, but it was empty except for a faint breeze coming through the open window. Odd, she was sure she'd closed it earlier. Next, she moved to the bedroom. The door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing an unmade bed and a wardrobe tucked into the corner. She peeked inside the wardrobe, calling out, "Found you!" Even though she knew neither child was there, just as she turned to leave, she heard a soft rustling above her head. Looking up, she saw Tessa perched on top of the wardrobe, grinning down at her like a cat ready to pounce. "How did you get up there?" Laura asked, startled. "I climbed," Tessa replied simply, leaping down with ease. Instead of landing, awkwardly like most kids might, she landed gracefully, barely making a sound. Laura stared at her, her heart pounding. There was definitely something unnatural about these children, before she could dwell on it too much. Rin's voice called out. From another part of the house? "You'll never find me." Laura forced a smile and continued her search. Eventually, she discovered him hiding behind a stack of boxes in the storage closet. He looked proud of himself, crossing his arms smugly. "This took you long enough," he teased. "Well, you're pretty sneaky," Laura admitted, ruffling his hair. As she did, she noticed his skin felt cooler than it should have, almost like touching stone rather than flesh. She quickly pulled her hand away, hoping he hadn't noticed. Once the game ended, Laura suggested reading a book together. She picked a colorful picture book from the shelf and settled onto the couch, with Rin sitting beside her and Tessa curled up at her feet. For a while, everything seemed almost normal. The fire crackled softly in the background, and the kids listened intently as Laura read aloud, occasionally interrupting with questions or comments. But then, halfway through the story, Rin suddenly asked, "Do you believe in monsters?" Laura paused, glancing at him over the top of the book. "Monsters? Like in fairy tales?" He shook his head. "No, real monsters. Ones that hunt in the dark." A shiver ran down Laura's spine. "Why are you asking me this?" "Because," Rin said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "my parents are hunters. They protect people from things you can't imagine." For a moment, Laura didn't know what to say. Was he telling the truth, or was this just a child's overactive imagination? She glanced at Tessa, who was nodding enthusiastically. "It's true," the girl exclaimed. "They're super strong and fast and scary when they fight." Laura swallowed hard, forcing herself to laugh lightly. "Well, I'm glad your parents are looking out for everyone then." Rin narrowed his eyes, studying her face. You don't believe me? No, it's not that, Laura said quickly, though her pulse quickened. It's just, well, it's hard to picture, you know? He didn't respond, but the look in his eyes suggested he wasn't convinced. Deciding it was best to change the subject, Laura closed the book and stood up. How about we play another game? Something quieter this time. Tessa groaned dramatically. No more games? I'm bored. Laura sighed, running a hand through her hair. Okay, what do you want to do then? Rin stood up, his expression thoughtful. Tell us about humans. What are they like? The question caught Laura off guard. Humans? Well, we're complicated. We have families, jobs, dreams. We make mistakes sometimes, but we also care about each other. And fear, Rin added, almost casually. Humans feel fear more than anything else. Laura frowned. I guess that's true. Fear is a big part of life, but we try to overcome it, right? Tessa tilted her head, looking puzzled. Why would you want to overcome fear? It's useful. It tells you when to run. Laura stared at her, realizing for the first time how differently these children viewed the world. Their perspectives weren't just unusual, they were alien. Literally, the realization hit her like a punch to the gut. These kids weren't human. They couldn't be. Her thoughts were interrupted by a loud crash outside, followed by the distant sound of growling. Laura froze, her heart racing. What was that? She whispered, more to herself than to the children. Rin and Tessa exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. Nothing to worry about, Rin said calmly. Just stay inside. Laura couldn't ignore the unease building in her chest. She walked to the window and peered outside, squinting into the darkness. Shadows moved among the trees, shifting in ways that didn't seem natural. Whatever was out there, it wasn't friendly. Turning back to the kids, she asked, What's going on? What are those things outside? Rin hesitated, then said, They're dangerous. That's why my parents left, to deal with them. Dangerous creatures lurking in the woods, parents who hunted monsters, glowing eyes unnatural. Strength it, all added up to something far beyond her comprehension. Yet despite her growing fear, she found herself determined to understand. Who are your parents, really? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. And what exactly are you? Tessa grinned mischievously, her teeth glinting in the firelight. We're special, she said. Better than humans. Rin shot her a warning look before addressing Laura. Our kind has watched yours for a long time. We protect you from threats you can't see. We chose you because... He trailed off, glancing toward the door as if expecting someone to walk in. Because why? Laura pressed, her curiosity outweighing her fear. Before he could answer, the front door burst open, and Kale and Nira stepped inside. Their silver robes shimmered in the dim light, and their masks still concealed their faces. Laura instinctively stepped back, shielding the children behind her. It's done, Kale announced, his voice low and steady. The threat has been neutralized. Nira nodded, removing her mask to reveal sharp angular features and piercing yellow eyes. You handled yourself well tonight, Laura. Thank you for keeping them safe. Laura stared at them, her mind struggling to process everything. What are you? She finally managed to ask. Kale removed his mask as well, revealing a face that was both beautiful and terrifying. We are Valari, he said, guardians of balance. And tonight, you became part of our story. Though her legs felt weak, Laura stood her ground. Why me? She asked. Why pick a random babysitter from a small town? Nira smiled. Faintly, her expression unreadable. Sometimes, the simplest choices lead to the greatest outcomes. As the fire crackled softly in the background, Laura realized her life would never be the same again. The silence in the cabin was heavy, broken only by the faint crackling of the fire and the distant rustling of leaves outside. Laura stood frozen, her mind racing to process what she had just heard. The Valari, guardians of balance, monsters in the woods. None of it made sense, yet every word they spoke felt undeniably true. She glanced at Rin and Tessa, who were watching her with a mix of curiosity and amusement, as if waiting to see how she would react. Kale stepped closer, his glowing eyes studying her intently. "You have questions?" he said, his voice calm but firm. "Ask them." Laura swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. "Why me?" she repeated, her voice shaking. "Slightly. Out of everyone in this town, why did you choose me to babysit your kids?" Nira exchanged a glance with Kale before answering. "'Cause you were unremarkable," she said bluntly. "No one would suspect someone like you of being involved. With us, invisibility is a valuable trait when dealing with matters beyond human understanding." Her words stung. Even though Laura knew they weren't meant to be cruel, unremarkable, that's how they saw her: ordinary, forgettable. For years, she'd felt invisible, stuck in her small-town life, unsure of her purpose. But hearing it, spoken aloud, made her chest tighten with a mix of anger and sadness. "And what exactly are matters beyond human understanding?" Laura asked, her tone sharper than she intended. "Are those things outside part of it?" Kale nodded. "Yes. The creatures you heard earlier are scrothrogue predators that feed on fear and chaos. They disrupt ecosystems and endanger civilizations. Our duty is to hunt them down before they cause harm." Laura's mind flashed back to the strange noises in the woods, the unnatural shadows moving among the trees. She shuddered at the thought of facing such creatures. "So you're saying there are monsters out there, and it's your job to stop them?" "Simple terms, yes," Nira replied. "But our work goes deeper than that. We maintain balance, not just for your world, but for others as well." Rin piped up from behind Laura. "Humans don't see the full picture. You think danger comes from other humans or natural disasters, but there's more. So much more." Laura turned to look at him, noticing the seriousness in his glowing eyes. Despite his young appearance, he carried himself with an air of wisdom far beyond his years. It was unsettling and fascinating all at once. Tessa tugged at Laura's sleeve, pulling her attention away. "Don't worry," the girl said cheerfully. "We protect you. You're safe with us." Safe? The word felt hollow given everything Laura had learned so far. How could she feel safe knowing that monsters existed and that these children, along with their parents, were part of a hidden war against them? Still, she forced a weak smile for Tessa's sake. "Thanks," she murmured. Kale gestured toward the couch. "Sit. There's more you need to understand." Reluctantly, Laura obeyed, sinking onto the edge of the cushion while Kale and Nira took seats across from her. Rin and Tessa sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, listening intently. "Your role tonight wasn't just about babysitting," Kale began. "It was a test-away to observe how you would respond to unusual circumstances. Humans often panic when confronted with the unknown. Yet you stayed calm, even when faced with evidence that challenged your reality." Laura frowned. "Ain't exactly stay calm. I'm still freaking out, honestly." Nira smiled faintly, "Which is understandable. But despite your fear, you adapted. You played games, baked cookies, and kept our children entertained. Those actions showed us something important. Compassion. Quality many of our kind have lost over time. Compassion." Laura hadn't thought of herself as particularly compassionate. Sure, she cared about people, but she always assumed others were braver or kinder than she was. Hearing Nira describe her that way made her feel different. Maybe she wasn't as ordinary as she'd believed. "What happens now?" Laura asked after a moment. "Do you just leave? Go back to hunting monsters wherever they show up?" "For now, yes," Kale replied. "Our mission here is complete. But we wanted to thank you personally for your help and explain why we chose you." Laura shook her head, still struggling to wrap her mind around everything. "This is insane. I mean, I'm just a babysitter. Why does any of this matter?" "It matters because you're part of the story now," Nira said softly. "Whether you realize it or not, your actions tonight helped ensure the safety of this area. And perhaps more." Rin leaned forward, his expression eager. "Does this mean she gets to come with us next time? Can she fight too?" said firmly, shooting Rin a warning glance. "Laura has her own path. Her role tonight was enough." Tessa pouted. "That's boring. I wanted her to stay longer." Laura chuckled nervously, unsure whether to feel relieved or disappointed. Part of her was curious about the Valerie's world, their hunts. Their battles. Their secrets, but another part of her knew she wasn't ready for something so dangerous. As if sensing her hesitation, Nira reached into the folds of her robe and pulled out a small object. It was a crystal pendant, shimmering faintly in the firelight. She held it out to Laura. "Take this. It will protect you should you ever find yourself in danger again." Laura hesitated before accepting the gift. The crystal felt warm in her hand, almost alive. "Thank you," she said quietly, "but I hope I never need it." Kale stood, signaling that the conversation was coming to an end. "We must go now. Our presence here cannot linger too long without drawing unwanted attention." Nira followed suit, adjusting her mask as she prepared to leave. "Remember what you've seen tonight, Laura. Not everything is as it seems. Trust your instincts, they'll guide you when logic fails." With that, the two adults turned and walked toward the door, motioning for Rin and Tessa to follow. The children hesitated, looking back at Laura with expressions that seemed almost reluctant. "Bye, Laura," Lessa called out, waving enthusiastically. "Thanks for the cookies." Rin gave a small nod, his glowing eyes locking onto hers one last time. "You're stronger than you think," he said simply, before disappearing through the doorway. For several minutes after they left, Laura sat alone in the cabin, staring at the crystal in her hand. The fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Outside, the forest was eerily quiet, as if holding its breath. She replayed the events of the night in her mind, piecing together fragments of conversation and observation. The Valari weren't evil. They were protectors, guardians of a balance most humans couldn't comprehend. And somehow, she had become entangled in their world, if only briefly. Standing up, Laura tucked the crystal into her pocket and began tidying up the cabin. The dishes from baking needed washing, the books needed returning to the shelf, and the blanket on the couch needed folding. Keeping busy helped distract her from the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. As she worked, she realized something. Surprising, she wasn't afraid anymore. Not completely, anyway. Yes, the idea of monsters lurking in the woods was terrifying, but it also filled her with a strange sense of wonder. The world was bigger and stranger than she'd ever imagined. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as insignificant as she'd thought. When everything was cleaned and put away, Laura grabbed her bag and headed for the door. Stepping outside, she paused to take one last look at the cabin. It seemed ordinary. Now, its wooden walls blending seamlessly into the surrounding trees, but she knew better. This place held secrets that had changed her forever. The drive back to Pine Ridge felt surreal, like waking from a vivid dream. By the time she reached her apartment, dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Exhausted but unable to sleep, Laura sat on her porch, clutching the crystal pendant tightly. Her phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Dawson. "Hope everything went okay? Let me know if you need anything." Laura stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Everything had gone fine, at least, as fine as it could when babysitting alien children whose parents hunted monsters. Finally, she typed a simple reply, "All good. Thanks for letting me know about the job." Setting her phone aside, she leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. The past few hours felt like a blur, yet every detail was etched into her memory. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: her life would never be the same again. And strangely, she was okay with that. The next few days passed in a haze for Laura. She went through the motions of her daily routine, attending classes, working odd jobs, and running errands, but her mind kept drifting back to that strange night at the cabin. The glowing eyes, the eerie growls from the woods, the calm yet unsettling presence of Kale, and near it all felt like a dream she couldn't shake. Yet every time she touched the crystal pendant tucked safely in her pocket, she was reminded that it had been real. At first, she tried to convince herself that the experience wasn't as extraordinary as it seemed. Maybe the Valari were just some eccentric travelers with elaborate costumes and gadgets designed to look supernatural. But deep down, she knew better. The way Rin and Tessa moved, their unnatural strength, the shadows shifting unnaturally in the corners of the room, none of those things could be explained away by fancy props or tricks. They were something else entirely. Despite her attempts to move on, Laura found herself paying closer attention to the world around her. Every rustle in the bushes made her pause. Every shadow stretching across the ground sent a shiver down her spine. Even the news reports about strange animal attacks in nearby towns took on new meaning. Were these incidents connected to the Velaries? Work? Or worse, were they signs of another threat lurking nearby? One evening, while walking home from her second job at the local cafe, Laura noticed something unusual. A pair of glowing amber eyes watched her from the edge of the woods. Her breath caught in her throat as she realized they looked exactly like Rin and Tessa's eyes. For a moment she considered turning and running, but instead she forced herself to stand still, clutching the crystal pendant tightly in her hand. "Hello," she called out hesitantly, her voice trembling. "Is someone there?" The figure stepped forward slowly, emerging from the darkness. It was Kale, his silver robe shimmering faintly under the moonlight. His mask was gone, revealing his sharp, angular features and piercing gaze. Behind him stood Nira, her expression unreadable as always. Laura let out a shaky breath. "You scared me," she admitted, trying to sound braver than she felt. "What are you doing here?" "We need your help again," Kale said without preamble. "Something's changed." Nira stepped closer, her movements graceful and deliberate. "The balance is shifting. We believe another Scroth has entered this area, one stronger and more cunning than before." Laura frowned, her stomach tightening with unease. "Why does this involve me? I'm not like you. I can't fight monsters." "You don't have to fight," Nira assured her, "but your presence may be crucial. Humans often underestimate compassion as a weapon, but it can weaken the Scroth. Fear feeds them, courage starves them." Kale nodded in agreement. "We chose you because you've shown resilience. Your instincts are strong, even if you doubt yourself. Tonight we'll need both." Laura hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. On one hand, the idea of facing another monster terrified her. On the other hand, she couldn't deny the pull of the unknown, the chance to see more of the hidden world Kale and Nira belonged to. After a long moment, she sighed. "All right, what do I need to do?" Relief flickered briefly in Kale's eyes. "Come with us. We'll explain everything on the way." Without waiting for further questions, they led her into the woods. Their footsteps silent despite the thick layer of leaves covering the forest floor. Laura followed cautiously, her senses on high alert. The air grew colder as they ventured. Deeper, the trees forming an impenetrable canopy overhead. Shadows danced eerily in the dim light, making it hard to tell what was real and what was imagined. After several minutes of walking, they reached a clearing where Rin and Tessa waited, sitting cross-legged on the ground. Both children greeted Laura with wide grins, though their expressions quickly turned serious when Kale addressed them. "The Scroth is close," he said, his tone grave. "It knows we're here. Stay alert." Rin nodded solemnly, his playful demeanor replaced by focus. Tessa clutched a small dagger-like object in her hand, its blade glinting faintly in the moonlight. Laura stared at it, her heart skipping a beat. "Are those kids really going to fight?" she whispered to Nira. "They are capable," Nira replied simply, "more so than most adults." Before Laura could respond, a low growl echoed through the clearing. Everyone froze, their attention turning toward the dense thicket ahead. Slowly, a massive shape emerged, its body shifting and contorting as if struggling to maintain a single form. One moment it resembled a wolf with jagged teeth and matted fur. The next, it morphed into a hulking creature with clawed hands and glowing red eyes. Laura's knees nearly buckled at the sight of it. This wasn't like the noises she'd heard before. This was Rila, a living nightmare, standing right in front of her. Kale and Nira stepped forward, shedding their human disguises in an instant. Their bodies transformed into sleek, feline-like hunters, their limbs elongated and covered in silvery fur. Claws extended from their fingertips, and their eyes burned with an intense golden light. Beside them, Rin and Tessa mirrored the transformation. Though their smaller frames retained hints of their childlike appearance, "Stay behind us," Kale instructed Laura, his voice now a deep growl. "No matter what happens, do not interfere." Laura nodded, backing away until she was pressed against a tree trunk. Her hands trembled as she gripped the crystal pendant, its warmth providing a small measure of comfort. The battle began almost. Immediately, a blur of motion too fast for her to fully comprehend. Kale lunged at the Scroth, his claws slashing through the air, while Nira circled around, searching for an opening. Rin and Tessa darted in and out, striking quickly before. Retreating, the Scroth roared, its voice a guttural mix of anger and pain. It swiped at Kale, narrowly missing him, then turned its attention to Laura. Its red eyes locked onto hers, and she felt a wave of terror wash over her. It was as if the creature was reaching into her mind, pulling out her deepest fears and amplifying them tenfold. She wanted to run, to scream, to do anything to escape the overwhelming dread, but she couldn't move. Her legs refused to obey, rooted to the spot by sheer panic. Then, suddenly, a memory surfaced. Nira's words about courage starving the Scroth. Summoning every ounce of strength she had, Laura forced herself to take a step forward, then another. Her breathing steadied, and though her heart still raced, she managed to meet the creature's gaze head-on. "You don't scare me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Leave us alone." For a brief moment, the Scroth hesitated, its monstrous form wavering uncertainly. Seizing the opportunity, Kale leaped onto its back, driving his claws deep into its flesh. Nira joined him, delivering a final blow that sent the creature collapsing to the ground. With a deafening roar, it dissolved into a cloud of black smoke, vanishing completely. Silence fell over the clearing as everyone caught their breath. Kale and Nira shifted back into their human forms, their faces pale but resolute.
Out.
Ran to Laura, throwing their arms around her in a tight hug. "You did it!" Tessa exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. "You helped us win?" Laura shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't do anything. You guys fought it off. But you faced your fear," Nira said gently, placing a hand on Laura's shoulder. "That took incredible bravery. Without it, we might not have succeeded." Kale nodded in agreement. "Prove tonight that humans are capable of greatness. Even when faced with the unknown, remember that." As the group made their way back to the cabin, Laura felt a newfound sense of purpose blooming within her. She might never fully understand the Valari's world, but she knew one thing for certain. She was part of something bigger now, something extraordinary. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, she wouldn't face them alone. The walk back to the cabin was quiet, the forest around them seemingly holding its breath after the chaos of the battle. Laura's legs felt heavy, not just from exhaustion, but from the weight of everything she had witnessed. Adrenaline that had coursed through her veins during the fight was fading, leaving behind a mix of emotions: relief, awe, and a lingering sense of unease. She clutched the crystal pendant tightly in her hand, its warmth a constant reminder of how close she had come to danger. Kale and Nira led the way, their movements calm and deliberate despite the tension still hanging in the air. Rin and Tessa trailed behind, occasionally whispering to each other or glancing at Laura with wide, curious eyes. Though they were clearly energized by the victory, there was an underlying seriousness in their expressions that made Laura realize this wasn't just a game for them, it was their life. When they reached the cabin, Kale gestured for everyone to sit by the fire. The flickering flames cast long shadows on the wooden walls, creating an atmosphere both cozy and surreal. Laura sank onto the couch, her body aching but her mind racing. She wanted answers, explanations, anything to help her make sense of what had happened. "You did well tonight," Kale said finally, breaking the silence. His voice was calm but carried a note of gratitude. "Not many humans could have faced the Scroth as you did." Laura shook her head, feeling undeserving of the praise. "I didn't do much. I just stood there and tried not to run." "It's more than most would have done," Nira added, sitting across from her. "Fear is natural, especially when confronted with something so alien. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. You showed us that tonight." Rin leaned forward, his glowing amber eyes fixed on Laura. "Do you believe us now, about who we are and why we're here?" Laura hesitated before answering. The truth was, she believed them not because she fully understood their world, but because she couldn't deny what she had seen. "I believe you," she said softly. "But I still don't know why you picked me. Why involve me at all?" Nira exchanged a glance with Kale before speaking. Because you're adaptable. Humans often underestimate themselves, thinking they're weak compared to beings like us. But your ability to adapt to face fear and uncertainty is one of your greatest strengths. And because you remind us of what we've lost, Kale added quietly. Over centuries, our kind has grown detached from compassion, from connection. Watching you interact with Rin and Tessa reminded us of qualities we once valued. Laura blinked, surprised by the admission. You mean you learned from us? In a way, yes, Nira replied. We protect your world, but observing humanity helps us remember our own humanity or what remains of it. Tessa tugged at Laura's sleeve, pulling her attention away from the adults. Does this mean you'll stay with us longer? The girl asked, hopefully. We can show you more tricks. Laura smiled faintly, touched by the childlike enthusiasm. I don't think I'm cut out for fighting monsters, she said gently. But I'm glad I could help tonight. Rin frowned, clearly disappointed. You're stronger than you. Think if you trained with us, you could be amazing. Enough, Kale interjected firmly. Laura has already risked enough. You won't ask for more. Though part of her appreciated the sentiment, another part of Laura felt a pang of regret. Deep down, she couldn't deny the thrill of being part of something greater, even if it terrified her. Still, she knew her place was here. In her ordinary life, not running through forests and battling creatures from nightmares. As the hours passed, the group settled into a comfortable rhythm. Laura listened intently as Kale and Nira shared stories about their missions, describing distant lands and ancient battles against threats no human could imagine. Rin and Tessa chimed in occasionally, recounting their favorite hunts with a mixture of pride and mischief. Despite the strangeness of it all, Laura found herself smiling, feeling oddly connected to these beings who were so different yet somehow familiar. Eventually, the conversation turned to the future. What happens next? Laura asked cautiously. Will you stay here or move on to another place? We must leave soon, Kale explained. Our presence draws too much attention. The Scroth may return if we linger. Besides, Nira added with a faint smile, there are other places that need protecting. Our work never truly ends. Laura nodded, though the thought of them leaving filled her with a strange sense of loss. In just a few short days, they had become a part of her life, a bizarre, impossible part, but one that had changed her forever. Before anyone could say more, the sound of footsteps outside broke the peaceful moment. Everyone froze, their attention turning toward the door. Kale stood quickly, his body tensing as he moved to investigate. When he opened the door, Mr. Dawson stood on the porch, looking sheepish and out of place. I hope I'm not interrupting, he began, glancing nervously at the group inside. I just wanted to check on Laura, make sure everything was okay. Laura stood, stepping forward to reassure him. I'm fine, Mr. Dawson. Everything's under control. Mr. Dawson hesitated, clearly sensing that something unusual was happening. But instead of pressing further, he simply nodded. Good. Well, if you need anything, let me know. With that, he turned and walked back toward the main road, leaving the group alone once again. After closing the door, Kale turned to Laura. Your friend seems trustworthy, but it's best not to involve others, unless absolutely necessary. I know, Laura replied, sinking back onto the couch. He probably thinks I've lost my mind anyway. Nira chuckled softly. Humans often doubt what they cannot see. But sometimes, faith is stronger than proof. The rest of the night passed uneventfully, with the group sharing quiet moments by the fire. By the time dawn broke, the cabin was bathed in soft golden light, signaling the end of an extraordinary chapter. Kale and Nira prepared to leave, gathering their belongings, and ensuring Rin and Tessa were ready. As they stood by the door, Kale turned to Laura one last time. Remember what you've learned, he said. The world is vast and full of wonders and dangers you can't begin to imagine. Trust yourself and trust the pendant. We'll guide you if you ever need it. Nira stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Laura's shoulder. You've earned our respect, Laura. Few humans would have faced what you did with such bravery. Carry that with you always. Rin and Tessa hugged her tightly, their small arms wrapping around her waist. Don't forget us, Tessa whispered. her voice tinged with sadness. "I won't," Laura promised, blinking back tears. "Take care of yourselves, okay?" With that, the Valerai family stepped outside and disappeared into the woods, their figures blending seamlessly with the shadows. For several minutes, Laura stood on the porch, watching until they were completely out of sight. Then, taking a deep breath, she turned and went back inside. The cabin felt eerily empty without them, the fire reduced to smoldering embers. Laura tidied up slowly, packing away the remnants of their brief stay. As she worked, she realized something important. Though the Valari were gone, their impact on her life remained. They had shown her a side of herself she hadn't known existed, a side capable of facing fear and embracing the unknown. By the time she left the cabin and returned to Pine Ridge, the sun was high in the sky, casting a warm glow over the town. Laura walked home, the crystal pendant still tucked safely in her pocket. Her heart was lighter than it had been in years, filled with a newfound sense of purpose. She might never see the Valari again, but she knew one thing for certain. Her ordinary life was anything but. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what she needed. Life in Pine Ridge slowly returned to its usual rhythm. But Laura couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted inside her. Days turned into weeks, and though she went about her routine attending classes, working part-time jobs, and running errands, her mind kept drifting back to the Valari. The memory of their glowing eyes, their sleek forms during the battle, and their words of wisdom lingered like a shadow she couldn't escape. At first, she tried to convince herself that it had all been some elaborate dream, but every time she touched the crystal pendant tucked safely in her pocket, reality came rushing back. It wasn't just a trinket. It was proof of everything she had experienced, a tangible connection to a world beyond her own. The townsfolk noticed a change in her, though they couldn't quite put their finger on what it was. Her neighbor, Mr. Dawson, often commented on how much more confident she seemed. "You've got this spark now," he said one afternoon as they chatted over the fence. "Did something happen while you were babysitting those kids?" Laura smiled, faintly, choosing her words carefully. "Let's just say I learned a few things about myself," she replied. "Things I didn't know before." Mr. Dawson nodded thoughtfully, but didn't press further. He had always been perceptive, and Laura suspected he knew there was more to her story than she was willing to share. Despite her attempts to move on, strange occurrences began popping up around town. Animals acted skittish, refusing to venture into certain parts of the forest. Farmers reported finding claw marks on trees, too large and sharp to belong to any known predator. Even the weather seemed off, with sudden gusts of wind rattling windows late at night. Laura paid close attention to these details, her instincts telling her they were connected to the Valari's mission. She wondered if Kale and Nira were still nearby, hunting down threats she couldn't see, or worse if another Scroth had slipped past them and was lurking somewhere in the shadows. One evening, as she walked home from work, Laura felt an inexplicable chill run down her spine. The air was unusually cold, and the woods surrounding the path seemed darker than usual. She quickened her pace, clutching the crystal pendant tightly in her hand. Its warmth reassured her, but it didn't completely erase the unease building. In her chest, halfway through the wooded trail, she stopped abruptly. A pair of glowing amber eyes stared at her from the tree line, identical to the ones she had seen the night Kale and Nira returned for her help. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, she thought about turning back. But then the figure stepped forward, revealing itself not as a monster, but as Rin. "Hey, Laura," he said casually, his voice carrying a hint of mischief. "Long time no see." Relief washed over her, though it was quickly replaced by confusion. "Rin, what are you doing here? Where are your parents?" "They're busy," he replied, shrugging nonchalantly. "But we wanted to check on you. Make sure you're okay." "We?" Laura asked, glancing around nervously. Sure enough, Tessa emerged from behind a tree, grinning widely. "You didn't think we'd forget about you, did you?"
The girl
chirped, skipping toward her. "We promised we wouldn't." Laura knelt down to their level, her heart swelling with affection despite the strangeness of the situation. "I'm glad to see you both," she admitted. "But why are you here alone? Isn't it dangerous?" Rin smirked, his golden eyes gleaming mischievously. Dangerous is our middle name. Yes, besides, we can take care of ourselves. Before Laura could respond, a low growl echoed through the forest. The children immediately tensed, their playful demeanor vanishing in an instant. Stay behind us, Rin instructed firmly, his voice taking on a tone of authority far beyond his years. Tessa pulled out the same dagger-like object Laura had seen during the last battle, her small hands gripping it tightly. Don't worry, she said, flashing a reassuring smile. We've got this. Laura's stomach churned as she realized what was happening. Another threat had found them, or rather, found her. She backed away, clutching the pendant as if it could shield her from whatever was coming. Shadows moved unnaturally among the trees, and a massive shape began to materialize, shifting between forms until it settled into something resembling a monstrous wolf with jagged teeth and glowing red eyes. This isn't good, Rin muttered under his breath. It's stronger than the last one. Laura felt panic rising within her, but she forced herself to remember Nira's words. Courage starves the scroth. Summoning every ounce of bravery she possessed, she stepped forward, positioning herself between the creature and the children. I won't let you hurt them, she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. The scroth roared, its gaze locking onto hers. For a brief moment, she felt its power probing her mind, trying to unearth her deepest fears. But instead of succumbing, she focused on the faces of Rin and Tessa, their trust, their laughter, their unwavering belief in her strength. With a deafening snarl, the scroth lunged at her. Before it could reach her, Rin and Tessa sprang into action, darting around the creature with incredible speed and precision. They struck quickly, distracting it long enough for Laura to grab a fallen branch and swing it at the beast's legs. To her surprise, the crystal pendant flared with light, imbuing the makeshift weapon with an energy that sent the scroth stumbling backward, encouraged by the unexpected advantage. Laura pressed forward, keeping the creature's attention on her while the children continued their assault. Though her arms ached and her legs trembled, she refused to back down. Each strike fueled her determination, reminding her of the courage she had discovered within herself. Finally, with one final blow from Tessa's dagger, the scroth collapsed, dissolving into a cloud of black smoke that vanished into the night. Silence fell over the forest, broken only by the sound of heavy breathing. You did it, Rin said, his voice filled with awe as he approached her. You really fought it off? Laura sank to her knees, exhaustion overtaking her body. Why, couldn't have done it without you two, she admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. Thank you. Tessa hugged her tightly, her small arms wrapping around Laura's neck. You're amazing, she whispered, just like we told you. As the adrenaline faded, Laura realized something profound. She wasn't the same person she had been before meeting the Valari. Their influence had awakened a strength and resilience she hadn't known she possessed. And though their paths might rarely cross again, their legacy lived on within her. A rustling sound drew her attention, and moments later Kale and Nira appeared, their silver robes shimmering faintly in the moonlight. They looked relieved, but also proud as they surveyed the scene. You've grown, Nira said softly, kneeling beside Laura. We knew you had potential, but seeing it firsthand, it's remarkable. Kale nodded in agreement. You've proven yourself not just to us, but to yourself. Remember this moment when doubt creeps in. Laura managed a weak smile, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you. There's no need for thanks, Nira replied gently. You've earned your place in this story, Laura. Carry it with pride. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Kale and Nira prepared to leave once again. Rin and Tessa hugged Laura tightly, promising to visit whenever they could. Then, with a final wave, the family disappeared into the woods, leaving Laura alone with her thoughts. Walking back to Pine Ridge, Laura felt a sense of peace settle over her. Life would never be ordinary again, not after everything she had seen and experienced. But maybe that was okay. Maybe embracing the extraordinary was exactly what she needed to find her true purpose. And as she held the crystal pendant close, she knew one thing for certain. No matter where her journey took her, she would carry the lessons of the Valari with her always.